Hi, 7th grade. It's Miss Dohan here to talk to you about conclusion paragraphs. Just like last time, I have some notes before we begin about when you're going to be taking notes. So on this slide, you are going to take some notes along with slides 3, 4, and 5. You're also going to be taking these notes in section 3 of your ELA notebook. So make sure you have all of your materials, a writing utensil, your ELA notebook, and let's get started. You can title this section of your notes conclusion paragraphs because that's the part of an essay that we're talking about. The conclusion paragraph has a few purposes. One, the purpose of this separate last section is to review the main ideas of your essay. It's to bring closure to an entire essay. And last, to give reader real-life application or a real-life kind of message or purpose for the information that you've been talking about. So let's go into a little bit more detail about the parts of a conclusion paragraph. So again, we know that conclusions come at the very, very end of an entire essay. Just like the conclusion sentence is the last sentence in a body paragraph, the conclusion paragraph is the last chunk in an essay. You do not need to take notes on this slide. This is a quick review of those three main parts. So those three main parts, again, are the restatement of the thesis, the link back to the hook, and so what. You should have this information already on a yellow sheet of paper glued into your section 3 of your ELA notebook. I'm going to go into a little bit more depth about each one of these parts. What I do want you to get down is I want you to get down this flow map of the structure of a conclusion paragraph. So just back on slide 2, we saw that there are 3 parts. This is another visualization of those 3 parts of a conclusion paragraph. So write this down. First, in the first box, the first part of a conclusion paragraph is the restatement of the thesis. Next, we have the link back to the hook. And finally, we have the so what. Remember that just because there are 3 parts does not equal 3 sentences. So in other words, we can have more than 1 sentence for each possible part. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the restatement of the thesis. And the goal of this piece is to remind your audience of the main points you've made in your essays. I want you to write down the following do's and don'ts. Do's for the restatement of the thesis. You should start with an ending transition. So this way, again, just like your conclusion sentences in a paragraph, you're showing that you're wrapping up or you're ending this essay overall. So you might use words like overall, to wrap up, or even in summary or in conclusion. Next, you do want to remind your reader of all of your main points. So you're going to need to make sure that you mention the 2 pieces of technology that you've discussed, as well as the impact on society. And here's where you can be a little bit more specific. For example, you can even say, overall, technology has greatly impacted society. For example, drones are used on farms to help farmers work quicker and more efficiently, and so on and so forth. So you're reviewing the main points and the main pieces of tech that you've used. Lastly, I actually have 2 more points. Another way to kind of restate your thesis and make sure that you're not using the exact same wording is to actually use synonyms and to even change some of the wording that you use. So some of the wording is going to need to be the same, like if you're the name of your technology, drones, chauffeur apps, but not using not copying and pasting the exact same wording and structures your thesis. Also, one thing that you can do is you can chunk your ideas and your review of all the main points into more than one sentence, like this example up here. So the first thing I do is I have a wrap-up transition. Overall, technology has greatly impacted society. For example, drones can be used on farms, blah, 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 and chauffeur apps, blah, 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 blah. So I'm adding variety as I'm reviewing my main points. Some quick do nots. Do not, with your restatement of the thesis, do not just copy and paste it. That doesn't show that you're, again, working to restate and review the main ideas in your own words. And last, do not only include like one or two of the main points. For example, don't just say, drones and chauffeur apps are examples of technology, period. Didn't work in the thesis statement, it's not going to work in the restatement of the thesis. Moving on. Next, we have the link back to the hook, and this is the second piece. And just like it talks or it sounds like, we're actually going back to the hook. We're actually going back to the very first part of our introductory paragraph. And the purpose of this, and you don't need to write this part down, is that it builds this feeling that your ideas have come full circle. In other words, this piece makes your essay sound really cohesive and that you've really thought about how all of these ideas fit together from the very beginning to the very end. So I do want you to write down now some strategies for the link back to the hook. So the strategies will depend on which type of hook that you chose. Anecdote, or if you chose a question, or if you chose the quote. So I know a lot of people chose the question and the quote strategies. So with quotes, what you want to do is you want to like directly reference that person's quote. So here are some sentence starters that you can use to reference back to that person. As blank's quote teaches, as blank words emphasize, as this person reveals. Those are all ways to make sure that you're directly referencing and going back to the words that maybe you used a quote from Thomas Jefferson in the intro that he said. So you're building, again, you're building that cohesion, that sense of, oh, it all fits together. Okay. If you used a question, you're going to directly answer your hook's question. So it says not your hook, but directly answer your hook's question. So if you said something about, you know, how is technology impacting our lives today? Well, you directly answer that and say something like, clearly, technology is changing people's lives dramatically. Okay, so it's making a direct connection back to that question. And lastly, if you chose the anecdote, again, you're going to refer back to the story. So here are some possible sentence starters that you can use. So if you had a story about, you know, Bill Gates or something like that, you might use, again, kind of to refer back to it. Bill Gates' story shows, the story of the boy who cried wolf confirms that. These are all ways to make sure, again, you're able to refer directly back to your hook and make your essay seem very full circle. Okay. The last part of your essay, and the thing that you're going to leave your audience with, is this piece called the so what. So this is the very last part of your essay, and it relates to the real-world significance of this information and why it's important for your audience. So a big question that you want to ask yourself is, what's important for my audience to take away from this essay? So we have our prompt again, and then I have generated some guiding questions for your so what that I want you to write down that will help you for this final essay. for this so what for this essay. So again, our prompt says, in a well-developed essay, explain how 2 recent technological advancements have had an impact on society. Provide facts, details, and supporting evidence to develop your ideas in the body of this essay. So we've already talked about the 2 recent technological advancements. This kind of big picture idea is that technology is having an impact on society. So to move away from now the information we've discussed from our informational text articles, so moving away now from drones and chauffeur apps and kiosks and online ordering and instant messaging apps, we need to think about the big picture application of technology and its impact on society. So I want you to write these questions down. The first one that you might consider when you're writing your so what. What do you want your audience to understand about how technology can help or hurt society? Next, if technology can help society, what does that mean about how people should use it? And then similar to that, if technology can hurt society, what does, and this should say, what does that mean about how people should use it? So the goal of these open-ended kind of questions are to move you away from the specifics that you've talked about for the body of your paragraphs, drones and so on, and move you into, okay, what can your audience and what should your audience know about technology and using it to make the world, hopefully, a better place. So that's all I've got for conclusion paragraphs. What you're going to do now is you're going to work on drafting your conclusion paragraph. However, before I let you go, there's a quote that I want to leave you with, and this is a quote from Octavia E. Butler. She's a science fiction author, and she said, "You don't start out writing good stuff. You start out writing crud," I changed it a little, "and thinking it's good stuff, and then gradually you get better at it. That's why I say one of the most valuable traits is persistence." And I just want to remind you, and I want to encourage you to be persistent and to think about your writing. You guys are working really, really hard on crafting these essays, but they're not going to be perfect right away, and that's okay. So this is our first round of conclusions, and next week, and a little bit on Friday, but it's going to be kind of crazy with Halloween, we'll continue to work on going back and asking ourselves, how can we make our introductions and our conclusions better? All right. Hope you have a great time drafting. Happy conclusions.